Welcome everybody to GeoHug. So before we kick off today's session, I would like to take this time to acknowledge the traditional lands which we're all coming from today. I live on the beautiful lands of the Gadigal of the people of the Aurora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and future. And yes, I am thrilled that we have Leah Moore joining us today. So Leah is currently the Chief Geologist at Petronas Resources and is a geologist with more than 15 years of experience in exploration, underground production, and consulting in Australia and PNG. And it is going to be absolutely brilliant learning from her today about tunnel vision and the roadblocks to exploration. So this is going to be an awesome session. I will be promoting you up as panelists throughout the session. You're more than welcome to come through if you can, and we'll do some great discussions at the end. But yes, thank you so much, Leah, for joining. It's awesome having you here today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jess. Glad to finally be here.
Me too. I was really curious what got you into geology to begin with.
I think it's a fairly common story with some geos that I accidentally fell into it. I started doing conservation biology at
Yeah,
uni and I found it really boring. And one of the first year units was the geography
yeah.
dynamics thing with old Annette, and I just really loved it and switched my degree over, and there you go. That's the rest is history.
Oh, that's brilliant. And yeah, you've been like more than 15 years now. What are some career highlights for you so far?
Well, I think I started out underground, and when I look back on it, I loved my time underground. I think it's a really exciting work environment, and I learned so much in those first 4 or 5 years, I guess. It's sort
Yeah.
of personality building, helped me come out of my shell. Being a part of the Bellevue sort of story as well is like that was a lot of work, but super exciting. It's a beautiful deposit.
Yeah.
Again, learned a lot of things there.
That's brilliant. What are some things you're hoping to achieve down the track?
Oh, I'm not sure. I just like seeing where things lead, and if it feels good at the time, it feels like the right path, then I sort of carry on in that path. I quite
Yeah,
enjoy a bit more of the strategic stuff these days, and looking at various projects and seeing how things all fit together at that corporate level, and lots of games of thrones going out there, I like to call it, but it keeps it exciting.
yeah, 100%. And I have been asking everyone to bring along, all my seekers to bring up some favorite pet rocks, and I'm wondering what ones you have for us today.
I have two that live on my desk, and they just sort of live here. One's a bit of gypsum that the underground foreman at Bellevue gave me, or Brent, and it's just really pretty. Actually, he gave one to one of the other geos first, and I got really sulky about it, so he found one for me as well. And the other is a bit of jaguar ore that now Geo Tyrone he brought to our site when he did a little day trip when he was still working there. And we cut it into a couple of bits, and there's one of the bits that gave me, and then the whole VMS thing sort of eventuated. So that's nice, but it's just pretty.
Wow, that's really cool. Oh, well, thank you for joining us today. It's awesome having you here. If you want to, yeah, share your screen and then we'll get stuck into it.
As everyone knows, tunnel vision and some roadblocks to exploration, but also it's a story about a journey that you may or may not find interesting. And I'll preface this by saying I got really into Chat GPT drawing pictures. I'm sure a lot of people out there are well into the Chat GPT space, maybe not, but it's quite fun, can be very amusing. But no matter what I did, I couldn't get it to take out the train tracks. So if anyone has any suggestions on better prompts, then I'm all ears. Disclaimers, etc., etc. Have a read of that later if you really want to. So this is the story. Don't expect to learn about VMS deposits or gold deposits. I'll leave all of that for the big dogs, but it's really just the journey that we've been on with our little Albus, discovery here in Western Australia, and sort of trials and tribulations along the way. I'll give you a bit of background context for anyone who doesn't know, possibly don't know. We're situated in the Yilgarn and the Canalpi terrain over in the eastern side, and the red dots on this middle image show the major gold deposits in the area, and the yellow stars are the bigger VMS deposits. There's really only 3 big ones at the moment, which is Golden Grove, Degussa, and Jaguar, which is just up the road. And the Patronus tenements are just around the Keith Kilkenny shear zone or tectonic zone, and which has the Sons of Gwalia, owned by Genesis, major deposit in there. We're situated in the Maniri domain, little greenstone belt, and have a bunch of ounces in there as well. And there's King of the Hills, which is actually now Vault, not Red 5. I should update this image. Jaguar, you can see, is situated up the road. So also Patronus, we rebranded from Kin, which IPO'd in 2013. They started back in the day. They were all about gold exploration and the consolidation of the tenements at that time. There was a bunch of prospector tenements, navigator tenements, and that's a really good story and strategy. I think there's a lot of value that can come out of, and a lot of good science from pulling stuff together in different data sets. But I think, you tried to run before they could walk, which actually some babies do this. They don't crawl, they just go straight to running, but that's great. And as you can see, the background image, they built a mill and a really, really large green shed, which is Taj Mahal, offices, site infrastructure. They purchased the old Lawler's mill from Goldfields at the time. And then it all kind of went a little bit sideways in 2017, which is long before I joined. But they sort of had to go back and keep building the MREs after that. And they just focused on incremental growth of the gold resources. And then we became part of I call it the Leonora Game of Thrones story, which is the sort of Genesis, here, Vault, Red 5 in the area. And we fortunately sold some of our ounces to Genesis, and now we have quite a bit of money, which helps because then we could rebirth as Patronus and sort of shake off the shackles of the past and focus on a new sort of exploration strategy moving forward. And yes, Patronus is Harry Potter inspired, for those wondering at home. No, it is not the oil and gas company from Malaysia. That's Petronas, just to be specific. And no, I don't care that, it is Harry Potter linked. I think it's great. We wanted to be a little bit different from everything else that was out there. So this journey, this story, back in 2022, when I had not long since joined Kin, it was all about gold. Like, where can I find gold? I need gold. I need more of the gold. I need gold targets. Like, gold price is just going up and up and up. Obviously, the 2024 prices are crazy. And once again, ChatGPT drew me an image of tunnel vision, but this time with gold veins. But if only the gold was as appears in that tunnel, then we'd all be laughing. So, I love this image. I love gold. Like, everything is just gold. If you haven't watched Austin Powers, suggest you go and check that one out. So I was just digging around in the data, reading the papers, thinking about gold systems. I watched some geohugs. Thank you, Ned Howard. This is actually stolen from his slide in there, and I copied that onto my desktop to just sort of study, and it's still sitting there on my desktop. I even spoke to Ned. I looked at the chemistry with Scott Halley. It was all like alteration footprints. I'd been told, we have massive footprints, and the carbonate alteration obliterated the magnetite, so we couldn't use, like, magnetics didn't work that well. The gravity worked really well. Looking at the data with Scott, it was all was it low sulfidation epithermal with an orogenic overprint. There's muscovite alteration in there in the pink circle. Like, that seemed like a good place to look, like hot fluids, better fluids, find more of the high grade stuff. This is just how my brain was going. That's how I focused in on the East Lynn shale unit, which is the blue litho dots on the left-hand side. And then over here, it's this blue line. So I looked at that and I started looking at, okay, is this got some potential? I'm trying to think of a different approach to the targeting in the area, which is just looking at the north-south kind of shear zones. I was trying to find something different, something potentially bigger. That pink dot there. So this is a picture from some of the East Lynn shale that I was looking at, which is pretty interesting. There's other bits in there as well. But I called a friend who I knew had done gold exploration up at Cali area in the Tanami, and I said, and this is Alex, I called her and she said, hey, have you thought about VMS deposits? Like, I explained the sort of stuff, and I said, no, I haven't. And that's when I went down an Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole of VMS. Like, oh, okay, I hadn't really worked in this before. I didn't know anything about it. What does this mean? Do we have this? How do I target for it? So the journey of the next phase of data diving was reasonably systematic and a phased approach as well. But I just read papers. I looked at the regional area. Did we have subsea floor, sea floor, high field strength granite? What did the welcome well area mean? And I'll show you in the next slide. Would this work for us? Could this be true? Was there enough data to tell us any of these sorts of things? So I went through and made a little presentation and sort of outlined the different checkpoints that I thought might indicate, based off of the research, the VMS potential. This crudely drawn pink outline here is the welcome well domain, which is what I thought would be the most prospective area, just because the Cardinia area, which is all this heavy dots, excuse me, was heavily drilled. That's where our gold resources were. If there was something there, surely it would have been found. Look in the area that had the least amount of information, but just enough to sort of tell you to go and hunt in that area. And I figured out there was enough to kind of indicate, and the geochemistry that we did have sort of pointed towards like, yes, but we need to do more work. So at that point, I went to the board, told them all of this, and said, I would like another $5,000 for an independent expert to do a review. And then there'd be another phase after that, which would be about $50,000 of sampling if that first phase was, pointed in the right direction. So they said yes. They said, great, go and do it, But if they had said, no, we're only a gold company, then none of this would have eventuated, and we wouldn't have discovered the things that we have today, which is all really good information about the geology and the science. But the board, they just, they allowed the geologists to do what they needed to do without sort of prejudice. The photo on the right has nothing to do with that, but it just demonstrates some really nice geology at the Vivian underground deposit from a site trip back in 2017. And my friend Alex is there on the left. So at that point, took it to the expert, Dr. Carl Brauhart, and he looked at our data. Do we have VMS mineralization in the data? He said yes, which was great. All of these numbers here, we had up to 1.3% copper just sitting in and around the area, reasonable zinc, lead, we already knew that we had lots of silver because, that's just one of the things that we knew about our deposit. Bismuth, antimony. So that was all looking pretty promising. The next phase, which was go out, collect some samples to really confirm that rare earth signature that we'd need to determine the fertility, the right point. So I sent VJ out to go collect some rock chip samples, which are the little blue stars. We got the results back, gave them to Carl, and he said, yes, that was great. Now we need to go and collect some more because it turns out that the Welcome Well area wasn't the hot prospective area that I expected it would be. It was actually where all of these yellow stars are that showed the most potential for VMS mineralization, which was surprising considering the data density that we had. So yes, Welcome Well, not prospective, but whoops, oh dear. We accidentally drilled Albus, the VMS target, in 2022, which was IP22DD01. This was originally drilled for an IP anomaly as part of an IP anomaly program that we did and announced at that time. So VJ, Project Geo at the time, when he logged this hole in 2022, in the comments in the database, it had weird VMS question mark. So it was sitting there under our nose that whole time, and we never looked at those comments in that context, and that just shows tunnel vision, you know, like slapped us in the face, but didn't even notice being slapped in the face. So VJ showed this to Carl. Carl said, you know, this is textbook, everything that you would see in a VMS deposit. And from there, I remember I was at the zoo with my family, and Carl called and was very excited. He said, you've got it. This just shows, you know, you have VMS potential in the area because there is VMS mineralization. It was amazing. And ChatGPT drew me an image of, it's meant to be tripping over a rock, but it ended up being guy sliding into large boulder. Yes. So here is the original Albus IP section from the 2022 announcement. And this is just showing we had gold mineralization at that point. We also had some up higher in the hole, but we intercepted gold around about that IP anomaly. So we thought that the gold answered it. Our gold mineralization has a lot of disseminated pyrite associated with it. And that's, you know, that was the answer to that at that time. It also sort of lined up with the Rangoon Fault, which is one of the sort of north-south shear zones that hosts a lot of our gold mineralization. So we even then modeled the gold results in that hole as part of our resource update in 2023 in between. And this blue line is IP22DD01. It just goes to show that, you know, with the tunnel vision and the blinkers on, you can miss a lot of things sometimes. Technically, that gold interpretation is still correct because there is gold higher up in the hole and the structures in and around, but we were wrong in assuming that it was just a gold structure. So this is an early iteration, very schematic interp of what we then thought would be the VMS mineralization. You can see the large black blob thickening as you go at depth, you know, which is what you would hope you would find. So we continued on our little journey. We then determined what we needed to collect more data, interrogate more data, and the data showed that not one favorable horizon, which is where Albus was sitting, actually turned out to be 5 favorable horizons, really good targets in there. We called in the help of Bruce Hooper to just assist in a consulting basis in the background. At the time, Kin was going through a bit of a lull in resource-wise, I mean, people resources. So we needed some expertise from outside to just assist because, you know, I hadn't done VMS exploration before, and internally that was just myself and VJ really. And we needed assistance. I'm not going to pretend that we know things that we don't. So we kept going through the data. Carl and VJ, then more geos, did chirp mapping and sampling along these areas. And it sort of threw up more questions like, okay, well, what does this mean for our gold mineralization? This sort of changes the interp of the whole area that we thought it would be, and the timing and understanding of the mineral systems. So we just kept working and testing that theory. So the next stage was to follow up that IP 22 DD01, as that was a clear, obvious drilling hit, and see what else was around it. And we did with AB 24 DD01. And this just shows, hopes and dreams. We can hope for the best, but actually it didn't turn out to be as thick down dip as we would have hoped. There was still mineralization there, but it was not just the bonanza economic, DeGrussa or Golden Grove that we would have hoped for. But we did confirm the geological model and orientation throughout there, which gave us a lot of info. We did a lot of detailed structural logging and got some more help up there from the Model Earth guys and Mike Monroe to unpack everything. And you can see the targets that we generated from all of this work and the surface sampling and mapping. There's more than just the one spot now. We've got all these really good drill targets, which are part of a current RC drill program, which will do some downhole EM on there as well. And we did downhole EM at Albus, and it showed some off-hole conductors, but obviously we need to sort of assess everything, rank it with all the other bits of information once we get it. So some of the surface chemistry down on the lunar and Cedric horizons actually ended up being stronger than the Albus surface chemistry. So the science behind that would suggest that there would be a really good target sitting underneath there, but obviously you have to drill it to find out, and then you keep going. So that's the sort of story of our little VMS journey and the accidental discoveries in there and the bits of things that we were sitting in front of our faces the whole time and we didn't look at or do anything with for whatever reason. But the second part of this talk, I guess, is the other roadblocks to exploration. And what I've learned over the years, or what out of this process was, is there such thing as unique ideas? We thought that, VMS in this new area, untested, no one's thought of this before. This is great. It's really exciting. And it is really exciting. But once I started digging down into the depths of the server, which is a scary place, you start talking to people that, discovered that, in 2015, they did an ASX announcement on VMS potential at Tonto, which is up further to the north, about 35 k's from where the Albus area is. They were going to test the diamond core for VMS potential and run assays, but they never did. There was no evidence of that, and the trail went quiet, and that was it, gone. In 2020, I found a report sitting in there where there was co-funded holes for VMS style mineralization. And the report was, I think it was a little bit one of those cases of you have to get the report in, so just sort of put the information in. But talking to the geos who were there at the time, chased them up at an RIU and said, like, what happened? Like, how did you decide on those holes, where they were, what happened after that? And at the time they said, well, the rock, like, it looked really interesting. We didn't hit anything big, of course, but we had to focus on gold. Like, that was what it was. Stay away from that. Just keep going with the gold. So that, the trail went quiet. So, once you start digging around, I think a lot of the cases, mediocre minds think up quickly, which is quite a negative, but I didn't want to say great minds think alike, because not all ideas are, great ideas. But there's just a lot of like, moments in there. And there's no one person that discovers any deposit or anything. It's all completely collaborative, team-based. The actions of one person helps the actions of another person, and everything is built on the people that have been there before you as well. We're all standing on the shoulders of the previous geos, and like even non-geos, like the fieldies and the corporate people. It's all part of one collective, I guess. And it's a big problem that we have, the limited retention of intellectual property by companies. So the ether just swallows it all up. People leave and this information gets lost, and then it takes a long time before it comes back into the fold again. That's all sort of wasted time as well. How much could have been done in between there? People often say, like, which is best? What's the best approach? The geochemistry? Is it geophysics? Is it structure? No, none of them. None of them are best. All of them together. And it's very deposit dependent as well. I mean, we all have to assess for everything, but I think what I've learned even more so is that you need to love and care for your data, because if you can't easily access validated data in a good form, and that everyone has the same information and access to, then like your job is a million times harder, and a lot of things can get lost out of it as well. What are the missing discovery opportunities? This is another chat GPT special of a doomsday emotional roller coaster. Exploration is heartbreak, and it is an emotional roller coaster. And statistically, discovery is very depressing. If you go and look at the stats out there, I think in summary, the discovery rates for VMS deposits are slightly higher than those for gold, thanks to their clustered nature and improved exploration technology and identified geological settings. This is taken straight off the internet. However, they still represent a significant exploration challenge with considerable upfront costs and time investment. In sum, the statistics for discovering new gold deposits should show a low probability given the high cost, long time frame, and multiple stages of exploration required. So if you start thinking too much about that, then you could wind up down in the bottom of the roller coaster here. But if we surround yourself with a really good team, good people, it helps keep the highs high, but the lows not as low, and you sort of all get through it together. That's whether you're choosing to go somewhere or whether you're doing the hiring. It's very important. I think the junior space is really hard to put your hand up and talk about the science and say, like, okay, that didn't work. We often talk about, chatting to Russell about this earlier, he's written a SEG article on this, but you have to be able to say, like, no, we're not going to keep going with that, leave that and move on to something else. But in the junior world, where it's all shareholder driven and it's all news flow and announcements, it's very difficult to sort of be honest and truthful about things and say, and just talk more about the science. That's not what people really want to see, I think. So hold yourself accountable. And these are the roadblocks to exploration. Don't be insert, whatever you want in here. My husband didn't want me to put that in there, except that there are 1,000 ways to skin a cat. And this image that I've put here perfectly immortalizes a moment between a really good friend of mine now, but I had not long since started at Lawlers from Granny Smith and Porgera, and thought that, I knew a lot of things. Thought that I knew how to do geology, mine geology, core logging. And Sarah was trying to tell me, like, no, like, that's not how we do it here. You need to do it like this. And I was saying, no, you guys don't, like, it's a crap way. You should do it this way because this is what we did at Granny's, and it was the good way. When actually, both ways are right. And that was a lesson that I've carried through with me to this day, of when going somewhere new, and the way that you've done things or you think things should be done isn't necessarily the best way. There's a lot of best ways to do things, and it's just remembering that, and remembering that everyone is all trying to get to the same endpoint at the end of the day. And that sometimes you just got to swallow your pride and put the ego aside. But just park it. We all have one. Some egos are stronger than others, but you just put it away. And using all of these lessons that we've all had and help improve us in the here and now. Ask for help. Like, there is nothing wrong with asking for help. And again, this is another ChatGPT specialty, and I don't know why the lady in the suit is wearing safety glasses and the woman or man next to her is wearing has a briefcase instead. But again, getting ChatGPT to sort of show an image of you're only as strong as the people that have come before you is quite difficult. Lack of knowledge is not a weakness, and it allows us to remain open and vulnerable to new things. And no, vulnerable is not a swear word either. Don't leave it until it's too late to ask for help is a big one. And again, that's where the ego comes into things as well. And just talk to everyone, talk to your, call up your friends and your network and your peers and your mentors and just ask how, because once again, the whole, mediocre mind sync up thing is chances are someone's already thought of something, come across something, which is highly applicable to your situation and your exploration efforts. And, unless you ask, you won't learn. And it's okay to admit that you don't know. But you got to consider what everything is, all of the stuff people tell you, and weigh it up with everything else and use your best educated guess. But I think it's the most important thing. Just ask. So thank you. And I still love gold.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Leah. That was so well presented. That was a lot of fun. So thank you. And some great things that you've learned and shared with us. So thank you so much for that.